Fame in the 60s and 70s came with very few guardrails. Some artists used that freedom to make extraordinary music. Others used it to do things they should have answered for a lot sooner. Here are the 17 music stars from 60s and 70s that deserved their downfall. Number 17. Screamin' Jay Hawkins. Screamin' Jay Hawkins was a showman in the most theatrical sense. He performed emerging from a coffin, wore a cape, carried a skull on a stick, and his 1956 recording of I Put a Spell on You was so unhinged that some radio stations refused to play it. He was genuinely original, and his influence on theatrical rock performance runs in a direct line to artists who came decades after him. He was also a man who fathered somewhere between 57 and 75 children, with women across the United States, Canada, and Europe, many of whom he never acknowledged and never supported financially. In the final years of his life, before his death in 2000, a documentary filmmaker helped organize a gathering of his known children. The number kept growing as the project continued. Hawkins had grown up in an orphanage and never knew his own father. The scale of abandonment he established with his own children was extraordinary, even by the loose standards the industry applied to its performers. Number 16. Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison was one of the most gifted lyricists of the 1960s and one of the most deliberately provocative performers of his era. He also had a documented pattern of behavior on stage and off that went well beyond artistic transgression. On March 1, 1969, Morrison performed with The Doors at the Dinner Key Auditorium in Miami, Florida. What happened during that show resulted in a warrant for his arrest on charges of lewd and lascivious behavior, indecent exposure, open profanity, and public drunkenness. Morrison was convicted of indecent exposure and profanity in September 1970, though a broader felony charge was not sustained. He appealed the conviction and died in Paris in July 1971 before the appeal was resolved. His conduct extended well beyond that single night. Multiple people who worked with and around the Doors documented his alcoholism and the escalating dysfunction it caused. Missed performances, onstage incoherence, confrontations that needed to be physically managed, and a general trajectory towards self-destruction that he seemed unwilling or unable to interrupt. The music the Doors made during this period stands on its own terms. Morrison's private behavior stands on its own as well. Number 15. Wayne Kramer. Wayne Kramer was the guitarist and co-founder of the MC5, the Detroit band whose 1969 live album Kick Out the Jams became a foundational text for both punk rock and hard rock. The band was politically radical, musically aggressive, and genuinely influential. In 1975, Kramer was arrested on charges of cocaine trafficking. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison at Lexington, Kentucky, serving 2 years before his release. The sentence ended the MC5 as a functioning band, as it had already disbanded by that point. But it also effectively ended Kramer's visibility as a working musician for the better part of a decade. Kramer has spoken publicly and at length about his time in prison and the drug addiction that preceded his arrest, describing it as a period of genuine reckoning with choices he had made. He rebuilt his career over subsequent decades, including founding the Prison Music Program, which provided musical instruments and instruction to incarcerated people. He passed away in February 2024. The drug trafficking conviction was a genuine low point, and he never argued otherwise. Number 14. Sly Stone. Sly Stone's run with Sly and the Family Stone from 1967 through the early 1970s produced some of the most innovative funk and soul music ever recorded. The trajectory of his career after 1971 is among the most dramatic collapses in popular music history. By the mid-1970s, Stone's cocaine use had progressed to a point that made him an unreliable performer, and an impossible business partner. He canceled shows without notice, appeared at venues hours late, and cycled through band members who could no longer tolerate the environment he had created. Tax debts and legal disputes accumulated without resolution. By the end of the decade, his commercial relevance had effectively evaporated. Stone spent periods living in a van in Los Angeles in the 2000s, which attracted considerable press attention given the scale of his earlier fame. He reached a settlement with a former manager over financial exploitation. He has given sporadic interviews, but never produced a sustained comeback. The talent that produced Everyday People is not in question. What he did with the career built on that talent is. Number 13. Don Henley. Don Henley was one of the most commercially successful musicians of the 1970s, first as a founding member of the Eagles and then as a solo artist. In November 1980, police were called to his Los Angeles home after a 16-year-old girl was found there, naked and suffering from a drug overdose. 2 other individuals were found at the property as well. Henley was charged with and pleaded no contest to contributing to the delinquency of a minor. He was fined $2,000, placed on probation for 2 years, and ordered to undergo drug counseling. No further criminal action followed. He has rarely addressed the incident in public, and the terms of his no contest plea meant it was not adjudicated as a formal finding of guilt. The Eagles' commercial trajectory continued almost uninterrupted. Henley's solo career in the 1980s produced a run of major hits. The legal incident faded from the conversation that surrounded his music. But the facts of what was found at his home that night, and the age of the girl who was found there, are part of the documented public record.
Welcome to the Hotel California.
Number 12. David Crosby.
That I had found a light to guide.
David Crosby was one of the founding members of both the Byrds and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, 2 of the most influential bands of the 1960s and 1970s. His vocal talent was genuine, his presence in the formation of the California rock sound was real, and his drug and legal history from the 1980s was extensive. In January 1982, Crosby was arrested backstage at a nightclub in Dallas after a loaded pistol and cocaine were found in his possession. He was convicted of illegal weapon and drug possession in 1983 and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He appealed the conviction and remained free while the appeal was pending, during which time he continued to use drugs and accumulated further legal problems. In 1985, he was sent to the Texas Department of Corrections after his appeal was denied, serving approximately 9 months before being paroled.
Only reflection of a shadow.
Crosby spoke openly about his addiction throughout the remainder of his life, including in a 1988 memoir titled Long Time Gone. He maintained that the years of drug use had caused irreversible damage to his health and his relationships. He passed away in January 2023 at the age of 81. His artistic contributions are real and documented. So is the decade-long period in which his choices made him a liability to everyone around him.
That I had found a light to guide.
Number 11. Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton built one of the most admired careers in the history of rock guitar, moving through Cream, Blind Faith, Derek and the Dominoes, and his own sustained solo career. On August 5, 1976, at the Birmingham Odeon, he interrupted his own concert to deliver a drunken onstage speech in which he declared that Britain should keep itself white and praised Enoch Powell, a politician notorious for his anti-immigration positions. His specific language was considerably more extreme than a polite summary suggests. 2 music journalists, Red Saunders and Roger Huddle, wrote an open letter to the music press pointing out that Clapton had built his career on Black American music, while now expressing views directly contrary to the humanity of the people who created it. Their letter led directly to the formation of Rock Against Racism, which organized major concerts and campaigns throughout the late 1970s and 1980s. Clapton has since described the incident as a product of alcohol. and in a 2018 radio interview called himself a nasty person during that period. He continued having sustained commercial and critical success afterward, a case study in how far a white performer's career could travel after remarks that would have ended almost anyone else's. Number 10. Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent was a fixture of hard rock radio in the 1970s, selling out arenas and building a reputation for volume, aggression, and stage energy. He was also, by his own admission in multiple interviews and in the 1998 documentary Jailbait, a man who in the 1970s arranged to become the legal guardian of a 17-year-old girl in order to pursue a relationship with her, avoiding legal consequences through the guardianship arrangement. Nugent has been open about this in various interviews over the years, framing it in ways that have generated considerable controversy. The specific account he described involved a young woman named Pele Massa, whose parents signed guardianship over to him in Hawaii. He was in his mid-20s at the time. Nugent continued performing and recording throughout subsequent decades, eventually building a secondary career as a political commentator and gun rights advocate. He has made repeated inflammatory public statements about political figures, musicians, and others, resulting in Secret Service visits on at least one occasion. His musical career never collapsed in the formal sense, but his reputation in large portions of the public did, and not without cause. Number 9. Chuck Berry.
Catch me playing with my ding-a-ling-a-ling-o.
Chuck Berry is widely and accurately described as one of the foundational figures of rock and roll. He was also convicted on serious charges twice, separated by 3 decades. In 1959, Berry was convicted under the Mann Act for transporting a 14-year-old girl across state lines. He had hired her to work at his St. Louis nightclub, and the charges arose from how he brought her from Texas to Missouri. He served approximately 2 years in federal prison, released in 1963, and returned to a recording career that continued producing hits.
She told me it was my ding-a-ling-a-ling-o.
In 1990, Berry was sued by dozens of women who alleged he had installed hidden cameras in the women's restrooms at his Missouri restaurant, Southern Air. The civil suit was settled for an undisclosed amount. He also faced a separate criminal charge, pleaded guilty, and received a fine and suspended sentence. The 1990 revelations generated less disruption than the 1959 conviction, partly because Berry was by then regarded as a historical figure rather than an active performer.
Catch me playing with my ding-a-ling-a-ling-o.
Number 8. Jimmy Page.
If there's a bustle in your hedgerow.
Jimmy Page is one of the most technically skilled and musically innovative guitarists in the history of rock music. Led Zeppelin's catalog, which he produced and for which he wrote much of the music, is among the most enduring in popular recording history. He is also one of the rock musicians of the 1970s, most consistently associated with the exploitation of underage girls.
It's just a sprinkling for May Queen.
Laurie Maddox, who was 14 years old when she was introduced to Page by a photographer at a concert, has given multiple interviews over several decades describing her relationship with him. She said she was approximately 14 when the relationship began, around 1972. Page was 28 at the time. Maddox and other women who were part of the groupie culture surrounding Led Zeppelin's tours in the early 1970s have described circumstances that, whatever the prevailing attitudes of the era toward such relationships, involved girls who were significantly below the age of consent in most American jurisdictions. Page has not publicly addressed these allegations in any sustained way. Led Zeppelin's music remains in heavy commercial rotation on classic rock radio, and the band's artistic reputation has not been formally affected by what has been documented in multiple accounts.
If there's a bustle in your hedgerow.
Number 7. John Phillips. John Phillips was the primary creative force behind the Mamas and the Papas, whose recordings of California Dreamin' and Monday Monday defined a strand of 1960s California pop. He was convicted of drug trafficking in 1981 and died in 2001, with a documented history of severe drug addiction that had begun during the band's most successful years. In 2009, his daughter Mackenzie Phillips published a memoir titled High on Arrival, in which she described a pattern of abuse by her father, beginning when she was a teenager. She said she was first assaulted at age 17 or 18, and that a decade-long period of abuse followed. She also described being injected with cocaine by her father when she was 11. Denny Doherty's daughter, Jessica, confirmed in a written statement that her late father had known of what John Phillips had done and was horrified by it. John Phillips' daughter, Chinna, also said she believed her sister's account. Michelle Phillips, John's second wife, disputed the allegations. John Phillips is not alive to respond. The allegations are serious and were corroborated by multiple people who had no apparent motive to fabricate. Number 6. Sid Vicious. Sid Vicious became the bassist for the Sex Pistols in 1977, replacing Glenn Matlock, whose departure was publicly attributed to musical differences and privately attributed to personality conflicts within the band. Vicious had minimal ability on bass when he joined and was often recorded separately from the band's actual performances. What he did have was a persona, aggressive, self-destructive, and visually striking, that suited the Pistols' image during their brief and explosive commercial run. On October 12, 1978, Nancy Spungen, Vicious's girlfriend, was found dead in the bathroom of their room at the Hotel Chelsea in New York City. She had been stabbed once in the abdomen with a hunting knife. Vicious was in the room and was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. He was released on bail. He died of a heroin overdose on February 2, 1979, before the case went to trial, at the age of 21. The question of exactly what happened in that hotel room has never been fully resolved in a court of law. Vicious had been deeply unstable well before the night of Spungen's death. His drug use was severe and well documented. His violence, toward himself and at times toward others, was not a surprise to anyone who had been around him regularly. Number 5. Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis was one of the most gifted and ferocious rock and roll pianists of his generation. His performances of Great Balls of Fire and Whole Lotta Shakin' Goin' On in the late 1950s were electric in a way that very few recordings of that era matched. In May 1958, Lewis arrived in London for a British tour with his new wife in tow. British journalists discovered that his wife, Myra Gale Brown, was 13 years old and was also his first cousin once removed. Lewis was 22. The UK tour was cancelled almost immediately after the discovery became public. The scandal devastated his career in Britain and significantly damaged it in the United States. He spent the following decade playing smaller venues and making modest commercial returns before gradually rebuilding his profile through a shift toward country music. Lewis reportedly claimed at various points that Myra was 15, not 13, and that the marriage was perfectly normal within Southern culture. The documentary record, including Myra's own memoir and subsequent interviews, established her age at the time of the marriage. Lewis married 7 times in total. His later years included additional legal and personal controversies, including a 1976 incident in which he accidentally shot his bass player in the chest. Number 4. Phil Spector. Phil Spector produced some of the most innovative popular recordings of the 1960s. The wall of sound technique he developed transformed how pop music was recorded and mixed, and his work with artists including the Ronettes, the Crystals, Ike and Tina Turner, and the Beatles on Let It Be, is part of the permanent record of the art form. He was also, by accounts that accumulated over decades, a deeply threatening person who habitually pointed firearms at musicians in recording sessions, threatened the people around him, and created an atmosphere of genuine fear. This was widely known in the music industry and consistently tolerated because of what he could deliver in the studio. On February 3, 2003, actress Lana Clarkson was found dead at Spector's home in Alhambra, California, shot once in the mouth. Spector's driver told police that Spector had emerged from the house saying, "I think I just killed somebody." After 2 trials, the first ending in a hung jury in 2007, Spector was convicted of second-degree murder in April 2009 and sentenced to 19 years to life. He died in prison in January 2021 at the age of 81.
My heart is silently breaking.
Number 3. Ike Turner. Ike Turner was a significant figure in the development of rhythm and blues and rock and roll, and the co-leader of the Ike and Tina Turner Revue, produced genuinely important music. He was also a man who physically abused Tina Turner throughout the years of their professional and personal relationship. Tina Turner described this abuse in her 1986 autobiography, I, Tina, later adapted into the 1993 film What's Love Got to Do with It, in specific, documented terms consistent across multiple subsequent interviews. She described beatings that began early in their relationship and continued for years, including incidents of severe physical violence in public and private settings. Ike Turner disputed her characterization, alternating between denial and partial acknowledgement over the years before his death, in December 2007 at the age of 76. Tina Turner went on to rebuild her solo career into one of the most remarkable comebacks in music history, eventually becoming one of the best-selling music artists of all time. Ike Turner's musical legacy is discussed, when it is discussed, with the weight of what she documented always present.
And we're rolling.
Number 2. Gary Glitter. Gary Glitter, born Paul Francis Gadd, was one of the most commercially successful glam rock performers of the early 1970s in Britain. His 1972 hit Rock and Roll Parts 1 and 2 became one of the decade's most recognizable stadium anthems. In 1997, Glitter took a computer for repair, and the technician discovered images of child sexual abuse on the hard drive. He pleaded guilty to downloading and possessing child pornography, and was sentenced to 4 months in prison in 1999. He was placed on the sex offenders register. After his release, he left England and was eventually deported from both Cambodia and Vietnam, following allegations of child abuse. He was convicted in Vietnam in 2006 and served a sentence there before deportation. Back in Britain, he was investigated as part of Operation U-Tree, the UK inquiry into historical child sexual abuse, and convicted in February 2015 of 1 count of attempted rape, 4 counts of indecent assault, and 1 count of sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 13. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison. His music has been removed from virtually all broadcast playlists and commercial outlets. Number 1. David Bowie.
This is ground control to Major Tom.
David Bowie is one of the most critically and commercially significant artists of the 20th century, and his influence on popular music, fashion, and art is documented and genuine. He is also a figure whose personal history in the 1970s, particularly in Los Angeles during the height of his Ziggy Stardust and Diamond Dogs periods, includes documented relationships with underage girls. Laurie Maddox and Sable Starr were among the young women, both teenagers at the time, who have spoken publicly about their encounters with Bowie during the early and mid-1970s. Maddox, who also described interactions with Jimmy Page, stated that she was 13 or 14 when she first encountered Bowie. Former groupie Pamela Des Barres, who was present in those circles, has written and spoken at length about what the culture of access around major rock artists looked like during that era. Bowie himself addressed some of this in later interviews. In a 1995 interview with the German magazine Stern, he acknowledged the period as one of personal excess, and said the early 1970s were years he did not particularly want to revisit. He stopped short of detailed admissions, but did not flatly deny the characterizations that circulated about that period. Bowie died in January 2016. In the weeks that followed his death, the contrast between the scale of the public mourning and what had been documented about his behavior with underage girls in the 1970s generated significant discussion. His artistic legacy remains substantial. The question of what he did with the access that fame gave him in those years remains part of the record as well.
This is ground control to Major Tom.
The 60s and 70s produced some of the most extraordinary music ever recorded. They also produced some of the most extraordinary misbehavior. If any of this surprised you, drop it in the comments. Hit like and subscribe. There's more to come.